Hey, y'all. Okay, so this is the third short lecture from Chapter 3 in your book. And here we're going to start discussing the emergence of scientific management as a means of organizational communication. So, to sort of summarize some of the things we've gone over already, we can talk about some of the general features of industrial capitalism. So, with the Industrial Revolution and the switch from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy, we find that workers can produce goods only by selling their labor power, their ability to work, to other people, to the capitalists, to the industrialists. And Karl Marx called this expropriation, right? That's just a fancy word for the fact that the way people make money in this system, the way the masses make money in this system, is by selling their ability to work to their bosses, right? Now, workers under this system are freed from any limitations that prevent them from freely selling their ability to work to capitalists. And from the capitalist point of view, from the point of view of the people who own things, own the factories and run things, the whole purpose of employing a worker is the expansion of a unit of capital, so taking money and making more money, right? And that money belongs then to the capitalist. So the whole reason, if I'm your employer, that I hire you is to use my money to make more. It's really that simple, right? And that's how the capitalist makes a profit. That's how the company makes money. Now, so as a result, workers sell their power to labor, their ability to work, for an agreed upon amount of time, 8 hours a day, right, or what have you, rather than a specific amount of labor. So in other words, when you go to work on an assembly line, you don't sign a contract or employment agreement that says, I'm going to make 100 widgets a day. You go to work with the understanding that you're going to work a certain number of hours a day and you're going to get paid a certain amount of money for each hour you work. Okay? As a result, the people in charge are always on the lookout to find ways to increase your productivity within a certain period of time. So I'm going to pay you for an hour, but during that hour, in order to make as much money as I can, I want you to do as much work as possible. Now, as Adam Smith famously observed, right, the way that you do this, or one of the most effective ways to guarantee that you're getting the most for your money, is through a practice that's known as the division of labor. Now, a really simple example of this would be the assembly line, right? So you make an assembly line, and you staff it with a bunch of people, and each person does one task. So instead of, like in the old days, if you made wagon wheels, you'd sit down and you make the whole wagon wheel, right? Your job on the assembly line might be just to put in one spoke. And you put in one spoke all day long, right? You just do that again and again and again and again. Okay, so you're not making the whole wheel anymore. You put in one spoke, the next guy puts in another spoke, the next guy puts in another spoke, and so on. That's the division of labor. You each have a specific job, right? Now, Marx argued that this division of labor alienates the worker from the things he or she produces. So what that means when I say it alienates someone is you don't understand the process anymore, right? It used to be if you were making wagon wheels, you understood every aspect of it, right? You understood the process from beginning to end. You knew that wagon wheel inside and out. You knew how to make the whole damn thing, right? But if you work on an assembly line and your job is just to stick one spoke in the wheel, the same spoke into different wheels all day long, right? Then that's all you know. You don't even really know how the wheel is put together. So as a result, you're not familiar with the product anymore, right? You're not familiar with the end product. You couldn't make a whole wagon wheel if you had to, because you only know one part of the process. So that's what Marx means when he says that it alienates the worker from the things he or she produces. That means we don't understand that thing anymore, right? If you were a wagon wheel maker or a barrel maker, you knew that end product. You were familiar with it, utterly familiar. You knew it from beginning to end. But with the division of labor, that isn't the case anymore, and you're making something that you don't even really know how it works or are familiar with it in any kind of intimate way. So this alienation arguably was furthered by Frederick Winslow Taylor, who developed the theory of scientific management. And what was so important about Taylor, right, he invented this new process that's known as the Taylorization of labor, right, it's named after him. It transformed how control was exerted in organizations. Now, Taylor was an engineer at Midvale Steel, in Pennsylvania. And what he was interested in as an engineer was finding the one best way to accomplish manufacturing tasks. So, for example, if you were going to Taylorize wagon wheel making, then Taylor would have been interested in what's the one best way to put that spoke in the wheel that will result in the highest level of productivity, right? What's the best way to do this so it cuts down on the amount of time and makes the most wheels, right? And so that's what he was interested in. That's what the Taylorization of labor is all about. Is the division of labor and figuring out the best way to do it. And he wanted to use scientific methods to figure out this best way. Now, it's important to realize that even though he used science, this still had a lot to do with employee relations, right? And at the time he was coming up with these ideas, there was a lot of bad feelings between workers and management. Now, you got to remember, people weren't working for themselves, or weren't working for big industry. They weren't used to this. Their lives were changing. They were going to work for other people, and this was looked down upon, and they were resentful of people managing their time and exerting this control over them, right? So as a result, a lot of people went to work in these new jobs, and they engaged in what was known as systematic soldiering, right? And when you engage in systematic soldiering, what you're doing is you're purposefully slowing down output. And Taylor argued that this was a natural reaction to industrial capitalism, right? Capitalists, the people in charge, are always trying to increase your output. They're always trying to increase the amount of goods that you make. They're always trying to increase their profit. And so he argued that the natural reaction to this was systematic soldiering, slowing things down on purpose, not working that hard. Right? I don't know if you've ever gone to a job, but I remember I went to a job once, and it was working for the county, cleaning things up. Right? I was a teenager, and the idea was they paid you pretty well, but you went out there and you were supposed to clean things up, like roads and so on, fix things. And I remember the first day I was there, one of the guys told me, "Hey man, you got to slow down. You're making us look bad. Right? We don't want to work that hard." Right? Don't work as hard as you can, right? Was sort of their idea. Just put in your time and get paid. And what that was systematic soldiering, right? Purposely slowing things down to screw the boss and make as much money as you can, right? So what we see then, right, is that employers would reduce what's known as the piece rate as efficiencies rose. So the more efficient things got, right, your piece rate would slow down. So as a result of this, employees would have to work harder to earn the same amount of money. As a result, they in turn slowed down their output and hid how efficiently they could actually do the work, because this was in their best interest, right? If you're working as hard as you can and they keep speeding things up in order to make more money, right, and firing people when you got too efficient, it's in your best interest to slow things down. And so it's important to recognize this idea of slowing things down on purpose was a collective decision. It's something the workers did together. When that guy came to me and he said, "Hey man, slow down, you're making us look bad," that was, he was telling me that's what we do here, right? It's a collective decision, right? And so as a result, a lot of employers looked at this and they said to themselves, "Man, we shouldn't let these people talk. We shouldn't let them get organized together, because if they do, they're going to try and screw us. It's in our best interest to have them not organize and not have the time to sit and meet and talk with one another," right? And even today, we see this going on, right? We know that Amazon, for example, notoriously doesn't want employees to organize. They were hiring private detectives in Europe, for example, to follow around their employees who were interested in possibly forming unions. Because the idea that workers get together and lobby, for their own best interest as a group, that's not good for the employer, right? They don't want that. Because if employees get together, they can dictate a lot of the terms of their own employment. And that's just not in the best interest of the organization. So Taylor looked at all this and he said, okay, we're going to use science to maximize efficiencies. We're going to use science to make people produce as much as we can in as little time as possible. And so he used 4 basic principles as part of his scientific approach, right? He looked at job design, at figuring out individual jobs scientifically, right? What do we need to have this person do? What do we need to have that person do? Then he went about scientifically selecting and training his individual workers. So I'm going to train you in the most efficient way to put in your wagon wheel, right? He tried to achieve a level of cooperation between management and workers so that workers wouldn't go about systematic soldiering and slowing things down. And then he proposed an equal division of work between managers and workers. And in this equal division, managers would develop how the system works, right? They'd figure out who does what, where, when, and how. And then the workers were just supposed to do it. And Taylor, of course, claimed that the increases in productivity benefited everyone, including the workers, because they got higher pay, right? If the company makes more money, you make more money. That was his idea. And so for Taylor, he said the only thing that prevented the successful implementation of scientific management was poor communication. So for Taylor, communication was really at the heart of his entire operation, right? If you use science and you communicated properly, you'd make more money, you'd increase efficiencies, and it would be in everyone's best interest. Okay, that ends this short lecture, and we'll pick this up next time. Thanks for checking it out.